All right, folks, you're listening to Real Talk on Mojo 50, where truth is the only political dividing line. I'm your host, John Griffin. Today, we're going to be discussing something very disturbing. It's a development in this country that I never thought I would live to see. A new poll reveals that millennials don't know what the Holocaust is. They don't even know it happened. I want you to make sure you heard me just now. Listeners, the next generation that's going to replace all of you doesn't even know what the Holocaust is. What is happening in the Democratic Party is anti-Semitism. No one in the Democratic Party is condemning overt anti-Semitism by leading Democrat voices. The phrase "it could never happen here" is now an absurdity of colossal arrogance for those who utter it. It's on the same level now, folks, as someone who says God himself could not sink this ship, who's on board the Titanic. The kind of unjustified sense of security that is prevalent just before something bad happens in movies. In movies, the disaster, the negative plot twist always follows the guy who says, "It could be worse, it could be raining." And in the case of Germany's greatest historical horrors, America is on the precipice too. And its most ardent anti-Nazis, the Democrats, do not see their own reflection, and yet still believe they have an automatic monopoly on designating people and entire belief systems offhand as Hitler or Nazi, without regard for actual similarity. That's the left, sounding the alarm about fictional Nazis while doing things that the actual Nazis did historically and preached historically, and the left is doing it with ever-increasing frequency. The cognitive dissonance is breathtaking. And that's the reality check, folks. Truth hurts, but so does a concentration camp, and so does the civil unrest that precedes it. Destinations undoubtedly in our future if ignorance and leftist radicalism continue to expand unchecked. The discomfort of a few cannot be allowed to overrule the survival of Western civilization. So how does this get started, folks? How does a civilized nation like Germany, with a rich history, how could they become this barbaric, become so savage? We're close to that, folks. People are being arrested for the things they think in America right now, today. How does that start is the question today. That's what we're asking ourselves. That's the reality check. Let's look at the meaning of evil through the eyes of the prosecution at the Nuremberg trials.
Hoping to understand how those people could commit such atrocities against my people. I believe there are a couple of factors that explain a lot of it. First, Germany is a country where people do what they're told. You obey your parents, teachers, clergymen, superior officers. You're raised from childhood not to question authority. So when Hitler comes to power, he has an entire nation that believes it's perfectly natural to do whatever he says. Second, propaganda. For years, Germans have been bombarded with ideas like Jews are not real human beings, or they're a corruption of the race. So when the government says it's permissible to deny Jews their rights and then says it's imperative to kill these inferior people, they comply, even if they've been your friends or neighbors.
Anything else?
I told you once that I was searching for the nature of evil. I think I've come close to defining it. A lack of empathy. It's the one characteristic that connects all the defendants. A genuine incapacity to feel with their fellow man. Evil, I think, is the absence of empathy.
Call on the chief prosecutor for his closing argument.
The Nazi movement will be of evil memory in history because of its persecution of the Jews. the most far-flung and terrible racial persecution of all time. So thorough and uncompromising was this program that the Jews of Europe as a race no longer exist, thus fulfilling the diabolic prophecy of Adolf Hitler at the beginning of the war. Generations to come will remember this decade. If we cannot eliminate the cause and prevent the repetition of these barbaric events, this century may yet succeed in bringing the doom of civilization. The time has come for final judgment, and if the case that I present seems hard and uncompromising, then it is only because the evidence makes it so. A glance at the doc will show that despite quarrels among themselves, each defendant played a part that fitted in with every other, and all advanced a common plan. It was these men among millions of others, and it was these men leading millions of others who built up Adolf Hitler. They intoxicated him. He, of the psychopathic personality, with power and adulation. They fed his hates and aroused his fears. They put a loaded gun in his eager hands. It was left to Hitler to pull the trigger, and when he did, they all, at that time, applauded. Hitler's guilt stands admitted, by some defendants reluctantly, by some vindictively. But Hitler's guilt is the guilt of the whole doc and of every man in it.
All right, folks, we'll be right back. You're listening to Real Talk on Mojo 50, where truth is the only political dividing line. Stay with us.